Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for yet another edition of Mentoring Mental Health and Public Health with Tolu Omadara here on Amogichude Communications. Thank you for being with us on this quarter-long journey that we have been on since the month of July 2023. This edition is a very special one because we have a great guest with us. And believe me, we don't use words anyhow in Amogate. She's somebody who is extremely committed and passionate to this journey. I call it a journey, the journey of mental health and mentoring. She has been on some of our previous editions, our webinars, mentoring and mental health webinars. She is a very passionate mental health advocate. She's a mental health professional. So she knows what she's talking about. And this edition, like I said, is very special because it will be very enriching. Let me use that word. It will be very enriching to garner our insights on mentoring and mental health because she's speaking from a lot of experience. Her name is Miss Adeola Agbelemoge. Before she speaks to us, let me just read a little bit of her profile to you. Adeola Agbelemoge is a counselor, she's a life coach, and she's a mental health advocate who is passionate about helping individuals navigate life's challenges, identify their strengths, overcome obstacles, and reach their full potential. Adeola is a UK certified counselor, a US certified adult mental health first aider, and psychological first aider. I'm going to repeat that. Adeola is a UK certified counselor, a US certified adult mental health first aider, and also a psychological first aider. She as well possesses a college degree in business administration. She's a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, and she's a certified recruiter. Miss Adeola Agbelemoge, what a joy, what a delight, what a pleasure, what a privilege to have you with us on the program today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this program. I'm actually grateful for it. Thank you, Tolu. I'm so grateful. Yes.
We are the ones that we are grateful, honestly. Okay, so we are going to launch into the conversation. Now, to be honest with you, one of the things that is top on my mind today is the issue of suicide, right? During the last episode, we referenced the World Suicide Day. The World Suicide Prevention Day was I think September 10. It was a Sunday. It was Sunday, September 10. And of course, you know probably more than many others the connection between mental health and suicide, and how a lot of suicide incidences can be prevented if mental health is taken more fastidiously. Another thing that is very interesting to me that I really like, and that's why I emphasized it in reading your profile, is that you are actually a mental health first aider. People understand the concept of having a physical health first aider. And so when somebody goes into, for instance, let's say, God forbid, a coma, or somebody has a near-death experience, people are trained. Some people who are not necessarily full medical professionals are trained to be first aiders, physical health first aiders. And thankfully, we now have the concept of mental health first aiders that can also help to prevent death or near-death experiences, because they can attend as a mental health first aid, right? Or they can provide mental health first aid. I'll make one more connection and then I'll ask my question. Now, one thing we have been passionately advocating for the last 2 months plus on this program has been that we need to have more people trained as mental health paraprofessionals, right? Just like we have the full psychiatrists, the truth is that we also need the research, the reports have shown that we also need mental health paraprofessionals who can be trained to act in the stead of the full psychiatrists and psychologists, especially because the world simply does not have enough of them, and there are times when we need those mental health professionals. So it's on this note that I want you to please enlighten us on your role. What does it really mean to be a mental health first aider? How did you get trained? What did this training entail? And what exactly is the criticality? How important is it for us, for societies, to have mental health first aiders such as you? Over to you, Ma.
Thank you so much, Tolu, for that question. And like you said, you have been emphasizing, having those paraprofessionals, especially in the mental health space. And I sincerely, absolutely agree with you because of the nature of the mental health issues and challenges that is going on right now, right? And if we look at, well, speaking from my client here that I am in Nigeria, if we look at the statistics of people that are actually reaching out for professional help when it comes to therapy and counseling, right? That statistic is still very low, right? Compared to that are going through these challenges, because people are not easily predisposed to saying, I want to go and see a counselor, I want to go and talk to a therapist, right? So talking about mental health first aid, I actually become a certified mental health first aider in 2020 during the COVID, and it was there was the mental health first aid organization in America. I don't know which states now, right? But they're still running. I could find out and get that across to you. So they did the training online, and it was actually a 24 hours training, if I would say, or a 12 hours training. It was a full day training, and it was done online. And one of the key things that we were taught, like you had rightly said, providing that first attention to anybody going through mental health challenges. Like the first aider, the medical first aider, right? They go a long way to save lives, because when they're able to come in with that initial intervention, right? And so this is what mental health first aiders do, to come in with that initial intervention and support for anyone that is going through mental health challenges. So some of the things we're taught is to understand and recognize the signs and symptoms of through mental health challenges, right? Understand them, whether it's depression, whether someone is suicidal, right? Whether someone is going through anxiety, panic attack, whatever mental health challenges. First, recognize these signs, because the truth of the matter is the reason why people are not, we see people maybe commit suicide, people go off to the deep end, this mental health issue progress to a state that, it becomes really critical, is because the people around them are not recognizing those signs. And they are not recognizing symptoms. Now, I was in an event that my organization, I work with a mental wellness organization. My organization put together, I think in September, early September, and a lady came to talk about her drug addiction and how she was to go through, overcome, and survive the drug addiction. And while she was sharing her story, she said, at a point, I became suicidal. I was going home every day and nobody saw the signs. Nobody symptoms. I mean, my family members, none of them could recognize that this person, is at that point of committing suicide. And, that really struck me, right? And it's the reason why for people, everyone across board, I tell people, whether in the workplace, whether in the family, whether your friends, everywhere, even in a religious institution, in the church, everywhere, mosques, everywhere, we must be able to recognize these signs, these symptoms, so that we can bring on that initial intervention to say, good afternoon, or I noticed this about you. Would you want to share, with me what you're going through, or would you like to speak with a professional? I will provide the support, right? Just first of all, bringing that person to the point of saying, I recognize that your personality has changed, your behavior has changed, you are the way you usually cope. I'm seeing some attitude and behavior that is not the norm with you, right? And I'm showing up for you to say, are you okay? Do you need help? Do you need someone to know? Do you understand? Right? So these are some of, the things that mental health first aiders do, right? So I would like to stop there.
Awesome. Thank you Thank you, thank you. You know, you've raised a number of issues that are going to lead to my further questions. But for our listeners, the first thing I want us to take note of is that she sort of alluded to some of the warning signs, which was going to be my next question. Like specifically in educating our listeners, what are those signs? She talked about personality change, behavior change, people suddenly not behaving the way they used to before. The people you have known, you notice some things that are atypical about them. But I want you to please elaborate a little bit more and now connect it especially to the role of mentoring. And I'll tell you why. You also said something that I think is critical. You more or less talked about this stigmatization of mental health issues. You know, you said people are still not approaching either the professionals or the paraprofessionals for help because there's still a stigma associated with it. I remember last week's episode, we were talking about Japan. The Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare in Japan had actually noticed an uptick in the increase of workers that were accessing compensation benefits for mental health issues. It had grown from about, I think, 200 to 1,800 over a 9-year period or over an 18-year period, beg your pardon. And so they saw the need to, begin to draw. Now, this was pre-COVID. This was 2018. By the time COVID happened, of course, it grew worse. So I wasn't surprised when you said you took this training during COVID, because COVID, of course, led to depression, led to isolation, which increased depression and it worsened things. The remote work also introduced the challenges on social life, which of course worsened the issues. Now, so when COVID happened in Japan, the rate of suicide actually increased and the mental health issues worsened. But one thing they also saw is that there was a need to train. So they introduced an in-house mentoring program as a way to boost the mental health support and to train mentors in workplaces who were willing to be mental health paraprofessionals to be support. But one thing they saw the training do was it helped if the mentors themselves begin to remove the stigma. Because before the training, baseline showed that mentors themselves who were supposed to be doing the counseling were still sort of associating mental health issues with stigma. So they saw that after the mental health training, like the one you went through, they tended to stigmatize mental health issues less. And so my question is, one, please elaborate more on those warning signs that people need to pick. And then two, how can we do more with mentoring, especially as regards the destigmatization, removing away the stigma for mental health issues so that people can feel more comfortable sharing that issues, sharing the challenges, and they don't have to wait for suicide to know that someone was going through so much mentally. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. Right. So I will just talk about general symptoms because, for all the issues as well, you have to be diagnosed. Do you understand? And be diagnosed based on, the symptoms that is related to each issues. So, for example, depression has its own, right? Panic attack has its own, psychosis has its own, and anxiety. All that. But yes, but to talk about generally, right? Like I hit on initially when I was speaking, there is, first, let me simplify by saying there should be a before and after with this person. Okay. Right. Okay. So the person normally, for example, had healthy eating habits, right? Then all of a sudden you see that the person to have unhealthy eating habit. Either the person has lots of appetite, right? Yeah. Or they begin to overeat. Yeah. Right. And then of course we also know that there are mental health issues related to that, where people, right, overeat and they throw up and all that, but just cutting across, right, things that when people are having mental health challenges, why? Because they have issues that is bothering them that has not been resolved. So we begin to see that they either have appetite or they don't want to eat, or they are eating while to serve as a cover-up for, whatever the issue they are dealing with. So usually these symptoms are supposed to be, some of them are supposed to be, a defensive coping habit, right? They are not actually a healthy habit, defensive coping habits. For example, you see someone that had to do drugs, right? Drug is a defensive coping for some people, right? They have an issue they are dealing with, and then they cannot, they cannot help themselves. They are getting high on something to help them go through life. You understand?
Wow.
Now we also have sleep patterns. People come, unable to sleep, right? They are finding it difficult to sleep, right? So that also seems that tend to just oversleep. They are just sleeping with their time. I mean, just to hide from the reality of what dealing with, or the sadness, or maybe, for example, some dealing with grief, the loss of a loved one. You just see them to sleep, to they don't want to deal with life. They don't want to deal with the reality, acknowledge the fact that that person is no longer in their life. Now we also have things like people becoming irritable. You understand? They are no longer friendly to be around. You see them also overly angry. Some of them become, when you see someone that normally is on the campsite become extra active, that is a sign that is going on. So these symptoms are when people also are not able to function, around people or around their daily life as well. So the symptoms become when you find out that people don't even want to wake up, take their bath. They don't want to write. So they are just about isolation. When you hear people say, I just want to be on my own, and even let's talk about the suicide as well. There was something that I learned during the mental health first aid training that stuck with me. Never be afraid to ask people, are you suicidal, right? Especially when that symptoms around them, that symptoms of, sometimes they are self-harming themselves, and sometimes they are saying things. Sometimes they are saying things that I just want to leave this world. I just want to go to somewhere where there is no pain. When you hear that, you can ask them, are you thinking of harming yourself? Right? Which actually goes against what we think should be done. We think, if the person is suicidal, don't ask the person, maybe you are putting the thought. No. If you are asking the person, really helping that person to come to terms with the fact that that person is having those thoughts, and you are able to help that person, right? So, I mean, these are some of signs that we out for. Once there is a change in behavior, when there is a change in lifestyle, right? So, and now I want to also quickly mention here that it is also not all changes that is, mental health issues, right?
Okay.
There are also the normal life. I mean, you see something that cuts your heart, a sad event, and then you become sad. You understand? You become sad and you are just carrying it, right? So sadness is part of life. It's a normal feeling. Right. So you say, maybe that person is going to depression. No. Except if after 2 weeks, a month, the person find out that of themselves, they cannot come out of that sadness. You understand? That is when
I was going to ask, when does regular life issue become a mental health matter? Okay, so when it's prolonged,
and you cannot help yourself. You can, because when the normal healthy state is when you are sad, after a while you're like, okay, I'm able to come out of it. Yes, it's part of life, you understand? But when you find out that even in your own strength and your ability, you cannot come out of it, then you need help. And then you need, I wanted to point that out, that it's not all, things that happen to us that is based on, mental health issues. But when you get to where it begins to affect your normal life, you cannot do your day-to-day normal activities anymore. For example, at work, you are dropping your performance, you are behaving poor, you are no longer even interested in doing that job. You lack motivation, you lack concentration, and you were not like that before.
Exactly.
It's fine, when somebody becomes, all of a sudden angry at work, and then you are just, something has happened to you and you have not dealt with, right? So these are some signs that we can look at. Yes, right. So when it comes to individual mental health issues, there are also further signs that people can look out for, right? And then you spoke on mentoring, right? Mentoring, and like you rightly said, for people to mentor people, I would start by saying it takes a healthy person, a healthy individual
to mentor another.
Yes, to mentor another. And it takes an healthy individual to create a healthy relationship and a healthy environment. You understand? So
yes.
mentoring and mentorship, the person must have, probably gone through life, and you have overcome those challenges, and then you are people, right? In that, understand? So for mentors, I will recommend, right, whether in the community, whether in the workplace, whether in religious institution, they should go through mental health first aid, right? They should be they're professionals. They are not full professionals. So you know that first instant intervention can actually save life. And so if mentors are in that space, then they should go through this training so that they will know how to, for example, in the workplace now, look at the supervisor and the team members, right? If you are able to identify that this person that is an A-performing team member suddenly becoming unproductive, suddenly losing concentration, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know what to look out for, you will begin to probably draft query to that person. And what that does is further affect that person's ability
to the situation. Exactly. Yes.
Wow. You are trained, right, to recognize the signs and symptoms. Then you can call the person up and have a conversation. I noticed this about you, right? What is going on? I mean, just asking that what is going on goes a long way, right? Because that person will feel that I'm cared for, I'm supported.
Yes.
You understand? And it's going to boost. Yes. So, I mean, this is key across the board.
Thank you so much.
Everywhere. Yes. Well,
thank you. Wow. To our listeners, Mr. Abdelemoge has said a lot. Let me just attempt to unpack some of the things she has said and to summarize it. Now, let's go to the question I asked about how do you identify the symptoms? One critical thing to reference is baseline, before and after, and which is part of why we continue to advocate for mentorship, because for you to be able to identify the before and after, you need to have had a relationship with the person. For me to be able to know this is not who you used to be, I needed to have known you. And that's why when we encourage relationships, and especially train those that are in those mentorship relationships to further have the mental health first aid skills, then it really goes a long way, like she said, in preventing many needless deaths. You don't want to know the suicide rates across the nations. It is unfortunately a constant increase. And like I said, COVID has only worsened it. There's been isolation, there's been loneliness, has become a new epidemic. The US Surgeon General recently released a report in that even in places like Nigeria, where we didn't used to have instances as high of suicide, it unfortunately went higher during COVID. We heard of young people jumping into the lagoon. So these are real issues. We cannot run away from them. And like she rightly said, if we are trained, if people in the workplaces, for instance, managers are trained to be able to identify these signs, right? Whether it is excessive eating or under eating, what is critical is that there is a departure from the norm, right? Whether it is under eating or overeating, what you will notice, there's a departure from what the person used to be. And whether it is excessive sleeping, you can see there's some form of defensive behavior. She spoke about them trying to avoid the issue. Some people talk about the several stages of grief. One of it is avoidance. People want to avoid the issue. And that's why I like one thing she said a lot that she learned from the training. She said one of the things she learned is that do not be afraid to call out the issue. Do not be afraid to to confront the issue. Remember, part of why the person is slipping into that mental health state to begin with is because he or she is unable to confront the issue. So you actually help, she said, by calling out the issue and compelling the person to confront the issue he or she has been trying to avoid. I know this sounds like a lot, but this is very critical, and it helps to have a mental health paraprofessional with us, breaking down these things, sharing these things, helping us to see what are the things we need to do and not do, right? She also said something that is very, very important, and that may bring me to the last question for this episode for the sake of time, but thankfully she'll be joining us for the next episode and we'll delve deeper. She said, for you to be a mentor, especially one that can act as a mental health paraprofessional, you yourself need to be healthy. And I laughed because, I can't remember a particular episode. A few episodes ago, we looked at the mentor side for the first time. For a long time, we had been looking at the impact of mentoring relationships on the mentees' mental health, on the mental health of the proteges. But we took one episode to, I think one of our listeners gave us a feedback about how do you even select mentors and so on and so forth. And we devoted that episode to the mentors to say, look, mentoring is about relationships, but one of the consistencies we have seen in terms of the definition of mentorship is that a mentor supports, a mentor guides, and of course, a mentor cares. And we've been saying that if you care but you cannot guide, at best you're a friend. If you can guide but you do not care, you may be a mentor, God forbid. But for you to be a mentor, you must know more than what that person knows. That has been one established pattern in virtually all the definitions, all the reports, all the articles we've read on mentoring. It's been established that the mentor needs to know more than the mentee or protege. And I really like that thing she said about the mentor, him or herself, must have overcome some issues of life to be able to guide the mentee or the protege as he or she goes through the issues that would normally affect his or her mental health. And now my question, is, so how do we ensure, because that episode that focused on the mentors, we saw that even the mentors themselves actually had their mental health improved by entering into a mentoring relationship. They took some research from the UK police force and they had some people volunteer to be mentors and some volunteer to be proteges, and they took them through a study, and they saw that even those who were mentoring, they took the baseline, they saw that their own mental health improved in the course of giving mental health support. So it's almost like it's in the course of giving that we receive. But at the same time, I still want to ask, is it possible for the health of the mentor, him or herself, to be overlooked, the mental health of the mentor? Because I'm being very, very practical here. Is there a point at which the mentor, him or herself, can be overburdened, as strong as he or she may be, as much as the mental health study shows that they themselves get enabled in the course of giving in mentor relationships? But is there still a possibility that the mental health of the mentor, him or herself, may be compromised, maybe through being overburdened? Or is it actually right to say that as long as that person has overcome some challenges, he or she can continue to be strong even while giving, as the study actually indicated? And I just want you to be very practical with us from your experience. And I think for the sake of time, this should be our last question. But please just go full blast on it, man. Thank you so much.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much for that question. And I mean, that question is so key. And I would come at it from the angle of me being a counselor. I remember when I was going through my counseling training, one key thing that I was told is counselors also need counselors. Right. Yes. So because, I mean, you're dealing with people that is bringing their life issues to you. And in a counseling relationship, just like a mentoring relationship, it's a relationship. And when you're in a relationship, you form a bond, right? So there is no how you will not carry what people are going through onto yourself.
Absolutely.
You can't separate yourself from it. You cannot, right? Especially if this is something you're called to do. You carry people in your heart. I tell people, you carry people in your heart. So when you're mentoring, it's a relationship. Mentoring is different from coaching. You understand?
Exactly.
So So I tell people mentoring is you opening up your life, profiling your life before people. You know, you are telling them, this is my model, my life model, right? And then I want you to pattern yourself according to that model, because it has over time worked for me. It's absolutely right that as mentors, you can't become overwhelmed. You can't become overwhelmed. You can become overwhelmed by the person that you are mentoring, the life issues that they're going through, because even with mentoring, you must also be empathizing with them, right? So you know, when some people will go through things and they become highly disturbing for you. I remember, I'll quickly share a lady that I was mentoring whilst I was working in an organization, and this lady was raped on her way to work.
Wow.
That affected me. You know, it affected me. And she actually became suicidal because she got pregnant. Right?
Oh no.
Just to cut that long story short, it got to me, and I was her mentor, right? Because I couldn't wrap my head around why you would do this to someone struggling to make an end, you know, make a living, right? So, but I had to talk about it because counselors also need counseling.
Very good. I was going to ask, how did you deal with this? Okay.
Yes, I had to speak to other professionals to say, hey, this is what I'm going through, right? And you know, we had that conversation and that talk around it. And over the years, even in my counseling space, I have people that I go to that are colleague counselors, and I'm like, you know, this is the state I'm in, and you know, I just need help. Why? Because if that mentor is not doing that, if that mentor doesn't have other mentors, that it can be one or two, you can just, you know, share with, to say, this is getting to me, help, you know, I need help, I need support in this area, you know. The person can begin to create a toxic environment for their mentees. Right?
Without realizing it.
Yes, without realizing it. So it is key that, you know, that when they get to that point, they recognize it, you know, that I'm overwhelmed, right? And then they reach out to people that they can talk to provide support for them as well.
Very good.
Right? So share that off, and they also will serve as mentors to other mentors, right? Share that off and be healthy relationship and, you know, healthy space for the people they are mentoring.
I'm so grateful, and I'm so excited. You don't know how excited I am at what you just said. I'll just share this as we as we wrap up, as a way of establishing and, you know, sometimes entrenching some of these principles that our guests like Mr. Agbelomoge just shared. Like I said, it was World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10, and you know, one of our psychiatrist friend, Dr. Taiwo Ajayi, he runs Tripath Care in the UK. He shared something about authenticity, and I was so excited. And I said to him, I said, sir, I'm going to, I actually plan to share all my everything I plan to put on my WhatsApp status updates. That day, September 10, was all about authenticity and vulnerability. And so I was excited to see him also say that for him, his focus on this World Suicide Prevention Day was authenticity. And the reason why that word came back to me as you were talking, it takes, I said authenticity and vulnerability are very critical, even for us as mentors, even for us as leaders. It's very, very important to be authentic enough to say, I myself, I am weak. I myself, I am burdened. I myself, as a mentor, I'm overwhelmed. And then when you are overwhelmed, you can go to others, like Mr. Agbelomoge said, and go to be renewed. Because why this principle is critical, you can only reproduce who you are. If you as a mentor, especially within the context of mental health relationships, you are trying to train your proteges to recognize when they are weak, and you are not modeling it, you'll be surprised that they are not going to do what you say, they are going to do what you're doing. You as a mentor yourself must recognize when you are weak. You must be authentic enough to be vulnerable. I think that was the word Dr. Ajayi pushed that day, vulnerability. I said exactly. We had another lady once, Kelsey Road, in one of our webinars. She also used that word. I remember sharing that again on that September 10. And look, if we have to create authentic relationships, where people feel psychologically safe enough to be vulnerable. And you yourself, as the leader in the mentoring relationship, must model the vulnerability and the authenticity. There is nothing wrong about being vulnerable, about being weak. You just need to know those you can be weak to, like Mr. Agbelumoge said. You just need to know those you can open up to, those you can be weak with, those you can go to from time to time. Mentors also need mentors, and counselors also need counseling. And the last reason why this is critical, if you are a mentor, and let's say, or you're a counselor like Mr. Agbelumoge, and you are, for instance, counseling, say, 100 people, just as for the sake of analysis. If you don't take care of yourself, the mental health of the 100 people connected to you can be at risk because you do not take care of yourself. So it is very detrimental. I'm telling you, it's very detrimental to public health when you as a mentor do not know when to renew, when to take time for self-renewal, when to admit that you're overwhelmed, when to turn to your counselor as a counselor, when to turn to your mentor as a mentor, and when to get renewed emotionally so that you can have the strength to forge ahead for the sake of others. Wow. Mr. Agbelumoge, thank you so much for drawing that out, for calling that out, for answering authentically by sharing your own experience and guiding us very practically. Please, do you have any last words or strong takeaways as we wrap up on today's episode, ma'am?
I would say on mentoring, mentors must realize that the role they are playing as mentors is critical, is defining, is shaping, and it can help to determine the course of a person's life, whether for good or for bad, right? So as a mentor, you must be careful and you must, be deliberate, that's the word, and intentional about all that you do. Because like I rightly said, I see mentoring as modeling. You are asking people model and pattern their life, according to yours, because you have gone through it, you have gone ahead, and you are telling them this is a path that you can walk in, right? So you must be deliberate, you must be intentional, you must take care of yourself. Self-care is key. Self-care is key. And I mean, that's what Tolu was saying, just as she was rounding up. Self-care is key. Know yourself, know when you are becoming overwhelmed, know when the relationship is right getting to you. Can I quickly add this? Also know when the relationship becomes toxic for you as a mentor.
Exactly. And you may need to exit the relationship.
So now it's not only a mentor that can create a toxic relationship. A mentee can also create a toxic
relationship. Absolutely.
And also, can I also say that look for connectedness in your relationship. When you want to mentor someone, you must be connecting with that person. Do not attempt to take on body, right? Because when you attempt body, you become overwhelmed, you become overburdened, you become stressed. We see burnout happening, in that space. So, let them say this, don't take on everybody, and know when even the mentee is creating a toxic environment, and don't be afraid to say, hey, this relationship is no longer healthy for me as a mentor, and I would like to bow out, right? So I think I want to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, what a program edition, what an episode. We cannot thank Mr. Adeola Agbelumoge enough for being with us on this edition. Please, I continue to appeal to us to act on these things. One, as policy makers, those of us making decisions at policy levels, national levels, state levels, local levels, let's canvass for things, for instance, like introducing in-house mentoring programs like we saw the Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare do in Japan. In-house mentoring programs where mentors are trained as mental health paraprofessionals, as Ms. Agbelumoge was telling us today. On an individual level, please take time to identify those signs she educated us about today. Identify them in your personal relationships, your family relationships, your professional relationships. You don't know how a simple How are you doing? Are you suicidal, like she said to us today, can go in preventing the loss of lives? Well, it's on this note that we draw a curtain on this edition of today's program. Thank you very much for doing this with us. My name remains Tolu Omadara. This remains Amogi Federal Communications, and we've had the privilege of having a mental health first aider, a trained mental health first aider, Miss Adiola Milamoge, share richly from our insight. We'll be back same time, same station next week, and it's such a joy and such a delight to do this with us. Thank you so much, and see you next week.